The Misfits. The people with opinions and the stories behind them. Argue with them. Disagree with them. If you're brave enough, listen to them. The people who think differently don't just shape conversations. They disrupt them. Because the Misfits aren't rare. They're among us.
Allie was adopted at birth, placed in foster care by 8, and moved through 11 placements before adulthood. She learned early how to read danger, survive chaos, and become whoever the room needed and required at that moment. But the child labeled too much grew into something much, much, much harder to ignore. A mother, a strategist, a business owner, a woman who stopped apologizing for the mess that kind of made her. Allie, welcome to Misfits Among Us.
Thank you. Good to be a misfit and good to be among you.
I love that. I love the Misfit Among Us. I want to start at the beginning, as we do with most of our podcasts, and I really want to just talk about you being adopted at birth and a lot of the stuff that happened to you kind of almost slowly like built this mold. You became this mold that you never knew you were going to be as a kid, but you went through some crazy shit. Let's talk about the beginning and all the crazy shit that you went through.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of a wild ride. I was actually adopted by a couple who was a little bit older, kind of an untraditional. My adopted dad was 50 when they brought me home. Back then, 50 was a lot older than it is today. He had already lived an extensive life and had farmed and then moved into the city and had lived this really big, full life. And I think it was really their last ditch attempt to save a failing marriage was really what adopting kids was about for them. And, you know, that seems like a great plan. When all is going downhill, like bring other lives into the chaos. Great, solid plan. It was 1972, nuclear family or nothing. It was a bad, really unfortunate situation. It was volatile and abusive and really rough. 1978 is when they started divorce proceedings. So I was 6, 5, probably 5.5 when it kind of started all getting going. My adopted mom moved us out of town. And so we ended up about 2 hours away in another little town in Iowa, but much bigger than the little town in Iowa that we started in. And now she was on her own. Single mom in it pre-80s was, I can't imagine. She had been shunned by the community that we lived in originally, so she didn't have a lot of support. My grandmother, her mother, thought very little of adopted children. To this day, I call her evil grandma. She was not a kind person, and she wasn't kind to her own daughter, so certainly she wasn't kind to the children that had been adopted and weren't blood. It was an unfortunate situation. So it didn't take long for me to end up in foster care. I was 8 at my first placement.
Did you feel that prior to being placed, were you like, this is a shit show? Like, this isn't working out right for me as a person, or did it not register?
No, I knew. I 100% knew. I mean, it was walking on eggshells all the time. My dad was just a really volatile human being. I don't know his backstory well enough to speak on why. When you're in a bad marriage, everything is turmoil. We were on the very far end of poverty. It was financial, it was stress, it was everything. But no, it did not take me long to do the math on how bad things were. They had adopted another child about 2 years, I think, before me. And she had some issues. To be fair, like she ended up in the hospital after running through the house, chasing me with a knife. She fell through a window and ended up with massive surgical issues on her arm. Having your adopted sibling try to kill you on a regular basis, that wasn't going on in my little friends' houses, right?
The 70s was wild. I mean, let's just say the 70s was a wild time.
Yeah.
Wild time.
Yeah. To be fair, now you have almost endless resources on parenting. I don't even know if Spock had written his book in 72. Maybe he did. I don't know. But I mean, there were no parenting websites and genres. And to be fair, all of your peers were judging you. They hadn't had to adopt children. They had their lives and their things. And it was brutal. I can't imagine you adopt a child who's incredibly violent and volatile and then bring another child in. I can't imagine. That was a lot to ask of anybody. It was not good. By the time I was 8, I was already like, okay, we're going to survive. We are not going to be doing kindergarten fun things. We're going to survive.
It's funny. You brought up something interesting, which I think we take for granted today, just by virtue of having this much technology around us. If there's a problem, if you have a question about what your kid is going through, honestly, you go on WebMD, you find out you're dying every third day. but at least you're able to ask the question. If you have a question about, my kid is doing X, Y, and Z, there's clearly some like Facebook group you can join to get the support you need. Back in the 70s, 80s, 90s, this didn't exist. And I couldn't have been I'm a parent now. And I think I'm good. I don't think I'm great. I don't know if I could even have existed back in, there was talk about no manual. There
literally nothing. Literally nothing. And you have to assume that whatever they were taught through their parents was
wrong.
The only reference, and it wasn't great. It wasn't great. I mean, like I said, I literally called her evil grandma. She wasn't teaching kindness and compassion. She wasn't teaching patience. And to be honest, my dad's parents were born in the 1860s. So I had never met them. They were long dead by the time I had come around. So
that date doesn't even
I know.
register with me.
I know. It is wild that, that side of my family, they came from Germany. They came over and walked across the prairies. They started in, I think, South Dakota and then ended up in the middle of nowhere, Iowa. And you just go, what? Like those were my grandparents? That's
was
wild.
The Oregon Trail really made after my family is the real question. And the answer is maybe.
Yes, maybe. I mean, my husband and I just finished watching 1883, the prequel to Yellowstone. And I had to keep reminding myself, my grandparents were born 3 or 4 years after that timeline.
It's insane.
I mean, it's bad enough I feel old because I was born in the 70s. Right. Now you're talking about your grandparents, not biologically, but in theory, in the 1880s.
And I want to go through the rest of your life. But you're touching on all these really great points, right? Like being 50 back then was fucking ancient. I mean, I guarantee.
So old.
You sat on a lazy boy, you had a drink, you watched some TV, you might have had a pipe in your hand. Literally like in my mind, when I'm thinking about somebody old, right? That comes to my mind. And now you look at people you look at Paul Rudd, who's looks like just a young dude who you want to hang out. Age isn't the same. It's different. And the way you treat your kids is different because of that. You're the cooler parent. You're still doing stuff with them. There's a whole different world.
That was just really setting the bar for I will say on the upside, and this is what my whole purpose of talking about this is as destructive and violent and volatile some of those times are, I can look back now and go, hey, my grandparents were born in the 1800s. I have the most bizarre musical tastes of any person you've ever seen because my dad would listen to really old country, not current of the day country, not Linda Ronstadt or, Kenny Rogers, old country, little Jimmy Dickens and stuff. And then my mom, who was 22 years younger, but still that is not a spring chicken at that point in that era. And she was listening to Lawrence Welk. And then I would turn on the 2 radio stations that we could get, and it was current modern day music. So I am very diverse because of the unique. Very eclectic because of this upbringing.
But interestingly, you being eclectic is kind of what made you kind of weirdly survive. You became a chameleon.
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay, so you, 8 years old, placed in a teenage runaway shelter.
Literally. Yeah. Yeah.
But not because you're a teenage runaway, because there's nowhere else for you to go. And this is like little orphan Annie times. We got a girl. We don't know where to stick her. Stick her in the runaway shelter. What could go wrong?
And it's funny because I still to this day remember the cop's name, or at least his first name, that had to take me there. And his name was Ed. And it was in Ames, Iowa. And he looked at the lady and she was looking at him what are you doing here with this with this little baby girl? What are you doing? And he was like, I don't know what to tell you. I don't have any answers for why this girl is here. And they knew this wasn't appropriate. They knew it wasn't the right place to put me. But the resources back then were abysmal at best. And mental health was a very not appropriate subject. So they already weren't addressing the people who had issues in the appropriate way. And now they're basically dropping me off like they're a daycare.
Talk about being lost in the system. You're placed in the system. Nobody knows what to do with you. I don't know if it's better today. I think we still are really bad at taking care. By we, I mean the greater we. We're still very bad at taking care of people that maybe we should help a little bit more.
I think I think that's one of the most terrifying parts of this story is the system is if not as bad, worse.
Worse. But
Yeah.
but here's what's crazy. This could have been a story where I found you in an alleyway in some
Oh, yeah.
random town, track marks on your arm. You could be kind of like doing like the whatever bob on whatever drug you're on. And we
Right.
could have whatever conversation. You could say, I got like 300 children. I don't know who anybody is. And I've got no money. But you ended
Yeah.
up doing well for yourself. So as much as we say the system sucks, I think there's an element, which I think some people are going to sit there and be like, I can't believe you fucking said that. There's still this element of you've got to be ballsy enough to be able to be in a system and be strong enough to say, I see what's around me and I know I need to be better. I need to push my way through because this cannot be where I end up. And I know that's not the right way for everyone.
No.
But that's what you did.
And to be fair, it's a little bit like a plane crash and you are the lone survivor. Some of the people that I grew up with, the majority of the women that I grew up with, well over 50%, because I ended up in a group home in my teen years for the kind of the same issue. The family could not get it together. And over 50% of those women who would be basically my age are gone, dead. And there was no out for them. They weren't going to make it. There was never a chance that they would come out of that situation. And so I don't know, was it where I sat on the plane? Is it who I am as a person? Was I just that stubborn? Probably. To be fair, I was a fighter. And that became problematic, I think, in a sense, when little boys are disruptive and when little boys speak up or create chaos, it's very much like, oh, boys being boys. When a little girl is and I remember in the same runaway shelter, standing up to these people and being like, I'm not going to go sit in a therapy room and have conversations with teenagers who are trying to talk about sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Like, I didn't want to be a part of that. And they were trying to like figure out how to program. And I remember one of the staff being like, are you going to be an attorney? You will argue anything, anywhere, anytime, any place. And I was like, yeah, I guess. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe.
But isn't that, this is like, this goes back to this weird idea of this pseudo-American dream. The trick is, it's not really that gold was ever lining the streets. It's not really that you come here and you got handouts. It was really, you need to like work your ass off to figure shit out. And you were put in a situation where you had to work your ass off to figure it out. And look, I look at my kids. I know you have kids. Like, we want to give them everything.
Sure.
Everything. Any gold spoon you could toss in their mouth, do it. You want them to have this great life. But at the same time, we know we're sitting there saying, are we making a little too easy on you because you don't have to figure it out? And like, you're the story. I attribute your story to my parents always being like, I had to walk 100 miles to school in the snow. You had to walk those miles in the snow, right? I mean,
well, and I got left at schools not knowing where I lived. One of my placements in Sioux City, Iowa, first day, I get in a van. They drive me to a school through a city I've never been to before. Never been to. 300 miles away from where I had started from, drop me off at the school. I walk in and register myself for 7th grade and mid-year, not on a first day of school or anything. And I get done with school, figuring it out, made it to all my classes, whatever. And I'm sitting on the steps and I'm like, well, all the buses have come and gone.
Now what?
All the parents have come and gone. The sun is going down. I had no idea where I lived. I didn't know whether to go up or down. There's no cell phones. There was no one left in the building. And, you just kind of go, okay, well, no one's coming to save me. So here we go.
This is crazy because it's probably more normal. And in a lot of cases, I'm sure there's some parents that are, I don't know, on benders, whatever the hell they're on, that they leave their kids at school all the time. But you were left there because you didn't have this family. And you went through 11 placements before your junior year. But this taught you how to like look around a room again, and you were able to be this chameleon. Did you need to be the fighter? Did you need to be the smartest? Did you need to be the weakest? Did you have to figure out a way to exist? That's tough. And let's own up to it. Kids don't know how to do that today.
No. And even the trauma of it, I think prepared me for what was to come, because it didn't get easier. And raising my daughters at a young age, very young age as a mother, it didn't get easier. And even then, early 90s, we still didn't have a lot of resources and I was on my own. And so it did prepare me for that. And I use the example of my husband who had the opposite. He had a Norman Rockwell life in rural Minnesota, mom and dad in love, one boy, one girl, little house. They worked at the same jobs. They had this beautiful life.
Boring.
And I know.
Boring
I
life.
didn't even know what to say about that. I was like, okay, that's what we dream of in there, in group homes, but you actually had it. And the problem was when his dad, who worked 44 years, saved every penny he had, died 6 months before his retirement. That was my husband's best friend. For a couple weeks, I was like, God, this has got to be crushing for him. This has got to be awful. And I was very sweet and very compassionate. By month 4, I did not understand why we were still sad, and that sounds awful, but I have never had the ability to take that much emotional bandwidth to mourn or to heal, because it had to be now or we're going to die. Everything was survival until I was 45. I mean, it was just, and that's how I ran, was outrunning the next bad thing, making as much money, doing as much work. So it was a weird experience to see it through the lens of someone who had no trauma.
I weirdly, you and I have a lot of, I think, personalities that mimic one another. Strangely, I'm kind of the same as you, right? If somebody passes away, I'm very sorry. Why haven't you gotten over it? And maybe it's just, I don't know. I'm sure I have issues. I'm sure we all have our own little issues, and I'm not able to deal with things in my own way. But at the same time, I look at the people like your husband, and if God forbid one day all the power went out and there was no food around, and he might be the person that would sit there and say, I don't know what to do. And then you're the person that sits there and says, listen, grab that fucking knife. We're going to go hunt a buffalo. Okay. We are going to eat. We are going to move on. And it's, and the extreme example, I think, is fitting because you both fit different elements of life. People aren't everything, right?
Yes.
Not everybody can be Bear Grylls that exists out and survives or in that survives. That's not normal. So I there's this beauty about you where you're able to figure things out when things are tough. And between you and me and anyone else, all the 9 people that are listening, between you and me, I like being the person to be able to figure out things when things are tough. Because I feel when things are good, if I don't know how to deal, there's enough people that know how to deal. That can be my crutch and get me through.
Right. And, know, I jokingly say, our marriage is the foundation of when people say you need one really boring person and one crazy person to make a good marriage. And I believe that. I stand on that. I mean, not that he's boring in a ho-hum way, but he has given me such a sense of Allie, you don't have to light your hair on fire every day. You can be okay now, which is wild because it literally took me basically 50 years to start thinking that way, because I am an immediate fixer. And it has been a problem. My kids, even the minute they have an issue, I'm like, boom, I will fix it. Get out of my way. This is not your problem. Get out of my way. I'll take care of it. Evidently, people don't like that. I don't know why.
Why? Yeah.
I don't know. But that's how I show love. I didn't know how to normalize that kind of affection. I am your body hider. I am your fix your problem. I am your solve your financial issues. I am your bail out of jail. I am all of those things. But people don't need that every moment. And so when you run in that all day, every day, it's really rough.
I get it. I get some people just want some element of normalcy. And if you don't play in the world of normalcy, it's tough. Okay. Yeah. 1995 was a big year for you. Big year, right? Can we say it's a big year? Adoption papers, big year.
There you go. Yep. Okay. I also have a daughter that was born that year. So I was like,
2 big things, 95.
Yeah. It's an interesting story. So it was actually while I was pregnant, and my adopted dad, here's this abusive man that I tried to get away from, and they bounced me through the system. In high school, I ended up moving back there. And by then he was 66 or something. He didn't have time or energy to abuse anyone. We had reconnected.
Hold on. I want to touch on this really quick so people understand. Sure. But the goal was, could we get her back to the family that originally adopted her, even though we've put her through all of these homes? Is there a chance we can get her back to that world versus saying, should she just be somewhere new? So this is what, let's set the ground rules for what's going on.
Yeah. And I mean, to tag on to that, I did have a 2-year placement with a foster family that was good. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't, the most amazing thing in the world, but it was really good. And they had actually gone to court after I'd been removed from them and then replaced that first time to ask for me to come back. My adopted family refused and said no, they didn't want that because I had gotten too close with them. So I bounced through all these other placements. And then at the age of like 15, between ninth grade and 10 and anywhere, whatever.
Who
some one of those
cares?
years.
Yeah.
Who cares?
Yeah.
I left the group home with the girls where I had, kind of hung out for a few years there. And they sent me back to my mom. Within 4 weeks, my stepdad had like tried to ground me for a month. I was involved. I was always involved. At that point, I was in flag corps, cheerleading, annual staff, and like they just wouldn't stop. They just wouldn't stop. Nothing I could do was ever going to be enough. And I finally I called my dad, my adopted dad, and I was just like, can I just like have a room at your house? Like, I don't even need you to parent me. I don't need anything. Just like, I need to be on my own, basically. And like I said, he was, in his late 60s at that point. He was like, yeah, whatever. I don't care. And I was almost 15, I think, when I moved in. And he like literally handed me the car keys. I didn't have my permit. I didn't have anything. It was just like, well, you can have the car from 3 to, whatever, and just be back and da-da-da. And I was like, this is amazing.
Where was this guy before? But yeah.
Right. So we had reconnected-ish. We weren't close by any stretch of the imagination. And when I did get pregnant, he kind of shunned me. But then by 95, he was like, hey, I'm going to bring you some stuff, for the new baby and da-da-da. So he drops this box off at the house and it's just garbage. It's like papers from first grade. It's like weird cartoon clippings he had saved for me or something back in the day. A peanut butter jar full of quarters with 1972 on them. Weird old man stuff. So I was like, thanks a lot, put it aside. And I honestly was going to just take the quarters and run, throw it away. And I dug through the box and I realized some of them had the adoption agency's name on the outside. And I was like, okay, interesting. And I opened them and it was the stuff I had already known, like non-identifying information of my birth parents. But there was a letter in there that was addressed to the adoption agency from my parents' attorney. And it basically was the attorney saying, we have not received any information from the birth mother, Helen Thompson. Who's Helen Thompson? Well, I had never even considered that I would ever know the name of anyone related to my birth family. And I read it and I read it again and I read it 3 more times. And I was like, I'm not really sure what all this means. Yeah. And so I went on like a hunt and pre-internet in 95, like there was some dial-up, but it was sketchy at best. And I went to the town where I knew they said she was from. That was in the information. And I went to the courthouse and I was like, who is this? What can you give me on this? And of course, back then they were saving like newspaper clippings and stuff. So I turned into a private eye. I didn't really get very far with it. And then I kind of got busy raising kids and put it aside. It was a very startling moment to have the name that you never thought you would have.
Was there any element of you that felt like you're going to learn more about where you came from and this is something you needed to go down? Or was this just kind of, I was a little interested, but like I didn't give a shit with everything that I've been through?
I had always said with my birth mother, and I still feel this way, she knew the choices that she made. So she had a child, and I'm grateful because in 1972, women still had reproductive rights. They had the right to choose, wild. And she did not choose to, have an abortion. So I'm here. So I always had like a sense of gratitude, but I don't need to know necessarily who you are. My curiosity always came from siblings and from dad. I had this insane vision of who my birth father was. Like I had such a daddy girl dream about who he was. And so I, like I said, I didn't really get very far. I found her name. I found some people that knew until you get to the DNA.
What was your vision of who you thought your dad was? Was he like a Hulk
Tom
Hogan?
Selleck. Tom Selleck, hands down.
Like Magnum
Funny.
PI Tom Selleck? Or
yes,
like 3 Men,
yes.
a little Magnum PI Tom Selleck?
Magnum PI, 100%.
I wish
was
I
my dad.
was Magnum PI Tom Selleck. Honestly.
Same, right? Like he was one of the coolest human beings that Tom Selleck in general, but Magnum PI, are you kidding?
Oh, yeah.
He was funny, the smile, the quirky. So that was really where my head lived. And he was perfect. Whatever whatever my birth mother wasn't in my head, my birth father was perfect.
Okay, so in your head, we got Tom Selleck. So you're like, okay, clearly it's Tom Selleck. I'm going to do some ancestry DNA to prove to myself that it's Tom Selleck, which is, usually things don't end up the way you think they're going to. It wasn't Tom Selleck. That's not what we're telling you.
Yeah, please do not sue me,
Selleck.
Tom Selleck. I'm not claiming to be your biological child, Tom Selleck.
Who's to say?
You never,
at this point in time if it was Tom Selleck?
The world is a weird place, and it was the 70s. So in fairness, you don't know. But I did do ancestry mostly because at some point in the documents, I did see that my birth mother had had a child 18 months before me. So I was like, okay, I definitely have a sibling. I spit in the little jar and sent it off, which is a weird thing to do. There was no big surprise at the end of that rainbow. I got the login and there were like some cousins and like whatever. And then maybe like 18 months to 2 years later, it came up and it was like, oh, an aunt. And I knew it wasn't the side of my birth mother. And I was, because I actually had done enough of her study just by her name that I knew that wasn't a thing. Long story long, like she sent me a message and was like, it says you're either my child or my niece, and I need an answer because I know you're not one of those things. And so I said, here's who I am. I know this much about my birth mother. I know nothing about my biological father. And I can only imagine, and her and I have talked about it a million times, where you could have just knocked her over with a feather, and we ended up meeting. She was actually coming up to Minneapolis right before the pandemic to see Oprah with some friends of hers. And we met in a hotel bar. And I went into it very, whatever, this is cute. I did not have the joyous moment leading up to it. It was more of like, this will be cool. Maybe she looks like me. Maybe it's, whatever. And I mean, the recognition like our souls had to have had was just bananas. Like I felt like I had known her my whole life, and she walked in and it was just wild. And then we're talking a little bit and she laid down pictures, and it had not occurred to me any point leading up to this that I would see pictures of my father. And I don't know why. Because I think I was just in, like self-protect mode. Yeah. And all of a sudden she lays down all these pictures, and I have never been more floored in my life. Just
what part of it took your breath away?
Of the pictures, I knew exactly who he was in a group of 20 because it looked like me as a kid. And he was probably 7 or 8. And I go, that's him. And she was like, yeah. I go, that is exactly what I looked like as a child. And I definitely do get like all of my looks from my father's side, 100%, no question. So it was kind of interesting, but she showed me a picture of him. Unfortunately, he did pass away in 1998. So I never did get to meet him, but he more than lived up to the person I thought he was going to be. He was loving, he was generous. People, still speak of him in just the most fond way. Imperfect. I don't think that would have sat well with me if he had been some perfect human being. I can't live up to that. And we continued to kind of talk. And I think it was more than midway through the conversation. By the way, he looked a lot like Tom Selleck.
I mean, if he didn't at this point in time,
he really did.
Me. Yeah.
Wild how much. And I told her that story and she was like, oh yeah. And she said, one of your uncles looked more like Tom Selleck than your dad did. And I was like, weird.
Yeah.
But, we're more than halfway through our conversation, which did last a long time. And she mentioned that he had a son. And so fast forward, it's been over 6 years now, which is wild to me. My brother, his children, and his wife are some of the most incredible human beings I have ever had the privilege of knowing. It is one of the greatest joys of my life to have this family in my life. I mean, it really is. It's like the gold at the end of the rainbow. So
is it weird to say like my brother? Is that weird?
Oh, wild. And, he's the same way. He's got a huge personality. I mean, my Bill, our father, was very tall. I want to say 6'10" or 11. And my brother's right there with him. And so, I'm like 5'7". And so anywhere I go, I'm the shortest person in the family, besides my sister-in-law, so we're the little tiny tots. The kids are all tall. My kids aren't tall. So, my husband's 6'6". So I'm literally just like walking around, at belly button level all day when we're together. But we've done trips together. We do holidays. It's
amazing.
10 out of 10, one of the coolest things that could ever happen to a person. And even at the far reaches of the family, like people, distant relatives have been nothing but welcoming. And I had a lot of fear around meeting them because of the way that my life had played out. Like I had, I'm a teen mom and and I've been married more than once. Oh my gosh, like I love everything about this family. The imperfections, there's a little chaos, there's, and they're still just the most brilliantly wonderful people.
When you told your story to your brother and anybody else on that side of the family, did anybody sit there and they were like, your dad didn't want to give you up or something like that?
I've heard both, but 90% of the people do not believe that he knew I existed, that there had never been an indicator of that he was a dad. And I think the thing that was really hard for me is that was absolutely the most commented thing, is that he and his mother, so Grandma Mary, who died also before I got to meet her, would have never let me out of their sight. So that was a little, not hard to hear, actually very confirming that these are my people, but would have been pretty cool to have that life, And so that's why I think I relish it so much now. I have 2 uncles, 2 aunties, and they're just the most amazing people. And I don't know. I have to almost pinch myself sometimes. My sister-in-law is one of the most amazing people. Her kids, I took them on like a road trip during COVID, and I was looking back at the pictures. I've gotten to go and experience like their graduations now. They're starting to grow up and be a part of their life and share my story with them. And it's been a wild ride. Little Allie is in full bliss talking about it. So
what was it like after you found your brother? Because you didn't want to have this relationship with your mother, and you doubled down on you doubled down on what was your father, and now the family that exists. Did anything change in terms of how you looked at your own family, how you started raising your own family after you got kind of back together with them, and I don't know, had a different focus or anything?
it definitely validated how important that connection was, that I've been right all along. I always knew, like I said, she had made this decision. I honor and respect the decision she made. I have no interest, and I will not go through this life and meet her. And I actually know that she knows now. It is a very small town that all of this happened in. And so there were a lot of like, oh, I play cards with Helen's so-and-so. And I was just like, there have been some wild stories. We would need a cocktail to talk about some of these stories, but just the connection. So she does know I exist. And then wildly, when I was spending 30 days down in Mexico a few years ago, I think 2025, I got another DNA hit. And it was actually the brother that I had spent the majority of my time looking for with Helen before I knew Bill had a son. And, I've been I got to meet him, but he is from my mother's side and he has been a delight, but he's really wanting to meet Helen's side. So that has been rougher to connect on, whereas like immediately, yes, with everybody on my dad's side. So
that's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. It's been a wild story of, and some of the common things that I get to call him my little brother, even though he's, because I am a few years older. And even though he's a giant, so I love calling him my little brother. We have a lot of personality traits. Like if you ever want to talk about nature versus nurture, like nature's doing a lot of work. And so, because, our dad and his moms were married and he was an only child, but it's been a wild genetic ride.
Yeah.
So I don't know that it changed. My kids were already grown. I had grandkids by the time I got to meet my brother. So
this is also insane that you had grandkids. I mean, honestly, like anybody who's watching this, if you're listening to it, you might not get it. But if you just turn this on, you're going to look at Allie and be like, how the fuck do you have a grandchild?
Well, and you've got this horrible light on my face, so I look even older. But yeah, no.
Please.
Yeah, I honestly, the trick to aging is don't acknowledge it. I still feel like I'm an irresponsible 20-year-old half the days. I have no idea who put me in charge of my own life some days.
All right, so let's talk about this irresponsible child that you may or may not have been, because you're alive right now.
I'm alive. I'm here.
And there was a good shot for you not to be, because you had this early exposure to drugs and alcohol because you were this young kid with all these older kids, and addiction existed, and women's groups, and just all of this stuff that I guarantee would just be like an emotional roller coaster of substance and stories and sex. I mean, you name it. How did you avoid all of this?
Honestly, that first night in the Runaway shelter, I was like, God, it stinks in here, and trying to sleep. And I realized it took me a while to figure out what it was, but, there were people smoking pot in the rooms next door. And I'd see people, and this is no judgment on people who use. This is my perception of, as a child, what I saw. And I think pot's a great resource for people if they have anxiety and stress, and Godspeed. But my view of it at the time was like, what is wrong with you? Like, you're like laying around and in a coma, and you're laughing at things, and you just, willy-nilly. And I didn't get it. I hadn't seen it prior to that. And then, every time I was in a different placement, it was a new drug that I got exposed to. I tell the story of being in a group home in Sioux City, and that was just teenagers who had run away or been in trouble with the law and whatever. It was like an office building that they weirdly put furniture in and called it a house. And so we had this like Formica floors or whatever they are, just like church basement floors. And there was like a potted fake plant. And I remember coming down, and this girl was having a full-on conversation. And by then I was 13. Like, I already knew what was going on. She had dropped acid and was having a conversation with the plant. I laughed because I had such an early exposure. I could have had any alcohol, any drug, anything I wanted by the time I was probably 8.5, for sure by 13. Unlimited access to pills, drugs, coke, anything I wanted. I chose not to even have my first taste of alcohol until I was 15, which sounds, when you say it like that, like, oh, I didn't even drink till I was 15. It sounds like a bad punchline, but it's true. I mean, I was very committed to control. That was the thing. And now, it gets positioned as a negative. Oh, you're a control freak. Yep, I'm alive because of that. And so to shift gears now and be like, oh, it's fine. Everybody just do whatever you want and go willy-nilly. It's no different than telling an alcoholic not to drink. It is a fundamental part of who I was. There are many points in my journey where I could have made a different decision that would have me in a very different place, in a trailer park in New Jersey. Who knows? And honestly, to be fair, dead. Mm-hmm. I mean, 53 is outliving the average lifespan of most people who come up through the system. And women in those systems have violence perpetrated on them at rates that you can't even imagine.
Did you ever?
Yeah.
Did you ever have moments where men showed up or whatever, and they were forceful and just all that stuff, just because, like, who's going to believe this little girl who lives in a home with? Yeah.
I was victimized as a child and in high school when I went to live with my dad, and I did get pregnant at 16. But before that, I was raped as a teenager by Mr. All-American. And who's going to believe me? Even coming back to that hometown, I knew a lot of the people, but I was still trash. Well, I did everything I could. I tried to assimilate. I tried to go back and make these friends that I had known when I was younger. I was an athlete. I ran. I tried. I did my best. And I was still trash. And when I got pregnant, then it was over. That town turned, just like they had on my mother. They immediately turned on me. There were two families, really, that allowed me to feel human in that moment. It was a guy I had dated prior to getting pregnant's family. They were very gracious and sweet to me. Every time I saw them, their dad he unfortunately passed from cancer. He would still hug me when I would see him out and about. And then one of my girlfriends, who is still my best friend, we had gone to preschool together and had just kind of, our lives kept intersecting. Like when I would come home to see my dad in the summers, or when they'd, force visitation, I'd go spend time with her. Her mom and dad, they they were the only people that offered to watch my daughter if I needed to. Her mom just passed in February, and that was rough. Like I said, I'm very like, people die, it's part of life, move on. But it was one of the few people left in the world that respected me despite my flaws. I think is one of the things I loved most about meeting the Johnston family, my birth father's family. They are the same people. They will still respect and care about you no matter what your flaws are. Now, does everybody get along and sing Kumbaya all the time? No. And I actually love that more.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to have
agree.
fights with people that you care about, and you're going to have those. A lot of the people who you would call kind, good people watched me drown. So the difference between being a good person and being a kind person is there can be a big line there.
Did you, when you ended up getting pregnant at a younger age, knowing that you were adopted and knowing everything that happened to you and knowing that you were in the system, did you stop and take pause and be like, God, man, if there's a chance that my kid who's going to be born is going to go through that same thing, like, is it worth it? Like, did you have any of these conversations?
100%. And, I was pretty much on my own too. I wasn't in some great relationship with her father at that point. Like, we tried to make it work. That was my first marriage, but we weren't. That was a horrible idea. Dumb idea. I had a lot of days of sitting. She was born in January. So I had the summer where I was just like, what do I do? And I obviously didn't have like a mom or a dad to like really go talk it out about. And I went through every scenario in my head 23 times. I absolutely affirm women's right to choose. If you've made the choice to not complete a pregnancy, my hat is off to you because that is not a decision anyone would want to make. But I knew for me as an adopted child, that was off the table, unfortunately. Unfortunately, because it immediately eliminated an option.
Mm-hmm.
Not that I would have chosen it, but I had two choices. And knowing that adoption for me had just sucked, that meant there was maybe a 50-50 chance she ended up with a good family.
Yeah.
I didn't know how I was going to parent. And I fucked it up, more than once, right? Like, please know that I am not here professing to be a super mom. But I knew with absolute certainty that I would love her as hard as anyone's ever been loved. And I would screw up the parenting. And I did. But all of my girls, I love them more than anything in this world, no matter where they go or the choices that they make. And so I guess I felt like that was better than rolling the dice on love. So I rolled the dice on parenting. I did the best I could. I've learned so much. I would do it 1,000% differently than I did. I really felt like I needed a husband. I really felt like I needed a man.
Hindsight's 2020, and you're looking at it through today's view. I have a number of friends who are single parents, and they make it work. And truthfully, they shouldn't be with anyone. They don't need anyone else
100%.
in their relationship to do this, and they're successful enough. So let's talk about this, though. You ended up saying, I need to give my family a better life than I had.
Yes.
Granted, you were a little bit more nuts in terms of rules and different things that were going into it, which personalities. Yes. You ended up starting up businesses and you became successful. And all of this is very much outside of the norm of kind of where you came from. Because again, you could have ended up a statistic. So
my daughter gave me the exact push that I needed, because now we're back to, it's not about you, Allie. This is not going to be your journey. Like, you have got to get it together. And I had originally, like, as I was coming up through school, had been really involved in photography. And I had, as cockily as you could, sent off my portfolio as a freshman, got accepted to an art school for photography. Assuming, they were very sweet about it. Like, absolutely, your acceptance is as long as you are able to graduate from high school like a normal human being. Well, the town I grew up in did not love me getting pregnant and basically forced me out of school. And so I tried to go to a different district, and actually that district was great, but it was going to take too long. And I needed a solution now. So I quickly got my GED. Passed on the first try, did not take any of the classes, and went right to college, went right into, we got to get some money flowing. So I worked, I went to, went to college and immediately loved everything about marketing. I already knew I loved marketing. I was a jingles girl. I watched the commercials, not the shows, like always, in my head. I've always been a story maker, a, creative thinker. So it just hit as opportunities would present themselves. A shock for people, I have ADHD, but I didn't know it at the time. And I don't like people telling me what to do. I find it really annoying. And so owning my own businesses it did a couple things. It allowed me the freedom with young children to try and be there when they needed me to. And also it gave me the freedom to not feel patterned. I talk about it a lot, is routines are the death of me. And it sucks because as I get older, I'm like, oh, you got to take these pills at night, or you got to put your contacts in. And I don't want to do any of that. I don't want to make my bed in the morning. I'm not doing that. So it gave me a little bit more of that, allowing myself to grow in a way that traditional work wouldn't have done. I've worked plenty of crap jobs. I have worked in gas stations and all of those things. The minute I could make it work without doing that, I did.
So now, and I know a lot of this isn't about what you're doing now. It really is about kind of how you were brought up and kind of the stories that you went through. But I do also really love in terms of what you do now. You run this all-female agency, and you've said, I asked you, I was like, is it all women? And you're like, it is, but not by design. It just worked out that way. It's not, we didn't plan on this. It just is what it is. But you've said that it's because you want to make sure that you're offering always a safe culture for the people that you work within. And look, I come from the advertising marketing background too, big companies, and we've talked about this. A lot of times nobody really cares about the safest culture. They care about the money. They care about getting the work done, and they care about moving on. And people are less of a value. It's more about the work. But
absolutely.
You've said, you just want a place for good people to be that feel really safe, that are able to get work done, and the work comes. And this is kind of the world that you've built, this Workhorse Marketing, which is the name. And you're a success, right? You're a success in this space.
Yeah, I'm so proud of not just the vision that I had, and I will tell you, I'm incredibly proud of the vision. The vision was, why can't an agency treat their clients like more than a wallet? And instead of doing big buys and just, taking the easy route, I want to get down in the dirt. I want to know why your website isn't converting. I want to know all of the reasons. If I walk into your building, are you treating people like crap? Well, I can't outmarket bad customer service. So I get down in the dirt and give them solutions and use their money like it's my own. That's my principle of how Workhorse was founded. And I think we talked about the name. The name came to me out of, one, I believe in work ethic. It's very important to me. My adopted father, who was also named Bill, was raised by much older grandparents, my grandparents, born in the 1800s. On the day of his father's funeral, he was going back after the funeral to plow with horses, with draft horses, which is wild to me. And one of them dropped dead in the field. He unhitched the one that was left and went in and bought his first tractor. And that, I remember that story as a kid, just like, well, I don't really have an excuse not to go to work because I have strep throat. If you can go on the day of your dad's funeral, go back to work, have the horse die, and still find a solution. And then when I found my birth father's family, his initials are in my logo unknowingly. I haven't known him as long as I've known the business, and he raised draft horses.
Wow.
Wild. Wow. So if you ever want to know that you have been validated by the name that you chose for your business and the work that you are doing, that is a universal, cannot be explained scenario to me.
I mean, this is like the perfect, this is almost like your sliding door, right? This was like the perfect moment. You chose to go the right way. It ended up being very wonderful for you. And it's also been able to let you provide for all of your kids and whatnot outside of everything else that you do, which again, coming from a girl whose grandparents were born in 1301, right?
Literally,
whose adopted father is 900 years old, right? By the time you reached a reasonable age, and you're able to sit there and say, look what I'm able to do. Again, you could have been this crazy statistic. There's so many hurdles you had to jump over. You could have fallen. You should
Absolutely,
have fallen.
unequivocally should have failed in every capacity. I made so many wrong turns along the way. Husbands, moves to different locations, trying to get out of things, getting myself into worse things over the years. But yeah, and it is so amazing to finally know you are exactly who you are meant to be. I do not have imposter syndrome. That's relatively new. I am exactly where I belong in the universe. Wild to get there, especially as a woman. You know, we undermine ourselves a lot as females, and to be able to provide for the women who work for me a place where they can grow their career and they can feel valued and they can have medical insurance. That was my number one thing, was like, we've got to have health insurance for these women. We have to do 401k match because women underinvest so massively compared to men. And so just, I don't need to Scrooge McDuck my way through a pile of money. I will not be your first female trillionaire. I don't care. I don't give a shit about money. Enough to feel safe so I sleep at night, check, right? And I want to build things that have something of value. I'm so proud I was able to get to a point where I just developed a trust a few years ago for my kids. Not as a braggy way, but as a girl who was garbage to everyone else. The idea that I have the one capacity to do that financially, but value my life enough and my family enough to do it after everything that we have been through. That's it. That's all I wanted, was that legacy of, like, no matter how badly I've fucked up and no badly how horrible a parent I may or may not have been, or however flawed everyone saw me in high school or in, whatever, I'm good. I'm good. And that's all that you can hope for in this life.
You call yourself garbage. I get it. If somebody didn't know you and you put down everything that you've done in life, right, up until a certain age, your life resume was shit.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
And it wasn't your fault.
No, and I always said this. I've always been politically active and interested. I very vividly remember watching the Reagan-Carter debates, which is disturbing when you realize what year that was. Yeah. But I remember sitting as a kid like, this is amazing. And I knew, even as a young child, I would never get to participate in that system because I was adopted. Well, being adopted made me trash. Like, there was no hope. And now you look at the shit that is going on and I'm like, oh, I could legitimately be president. But now easy. We're not doing that. No Allie for president. But you know what I mean? Like, it's so astonishing to me how much we've normalized or been willing to accept people not having perfect lives. It used to be you had to go to Harvard, you had to marry your high school sweetheart, you had to be a boy. So even though it won't be me, I love that we are at a place where we can finally say to the women who have imperfect lives, who have grown through the fire, you can lead us. You can lead us and you can do it 100 times better than the dumpster fire doing it now. So I don't joke about being garbage. I know that was the perception people had of me. To be fair, I never felt like complete garbage. I always knew I had something to give back to. I always knew I was not more than someone else, but enough in my mind. I like to think I had some really good spirits guiding me through that. I always say, like, if it ends tomorrow, if it ends at 53.75 years old, I am good. I am so good. It has been a journey. There are things I still wish I could fix. There are still things I wish I could do. I am a traveler. Show me the world. Show me there's more out there. Show me I can go see these things. And I have traveled extensively. And I do spend, 30 days in Europe once a year just because I can now. And the last couple of years, spent 30 days down in Mexico during the winter because I hate the cold, by the way. I love my husband, but Minnesota, it's cold here. Stop. Yeah. Stop. It's cold.
Will you do me a favor? Can you I want you to tell a story real quick. And I know we're going a little long, but I want you to tell a story real quick. And this is what I love about you. And I think there's this imperfect perfection about you
Well, thank you.
that I
That's such
think
a compliment.
so.
I think
It
that's the
is.
nicest thing anyone can say to you.
Yeah,
Really.
it is. It is. I think it is because again, you had a million ways that things didn't have to go right. You've been able to figure it out, and I think you've said but I think the ways that things have gone wrong have taught you enough to say this is what I need to do to directionally go right.
Mhm.
I want to talk about, if you don't want to talk about it, you can say you don't want to talk about it. I want to talk about the offer that you made to your son. Where
Oh, you're
yeah, I want to talk about this because I think this is such a unique way of parenting. And I also think, again, this is the imperfect perfection that exists where you're sitting there and you're saying, look, there's different ways to do things. And it isn't just about going to a university, figuring things out. Like there's different ways. And you have this little hard knocks where you're like, we're going to
do some shit.
We're going to do some shit. Can you talk about that? I love this.
So this is actually such a good example of why I know that I've made mistakes with my children and God bless them, every one of them, right? But if you aren't learning, then it's over. So every time something happens, I swear I have always tried to learn from it or make an adjustment or do something different. And so, like fast forward, I had my 3 children, met my husband. He had 2 very young boys. I had empty nested my children. And met him, he had 6 and 8-year-olds, boys. And I did not know what to do with this. I had 3 girls. They do not smell good. Okay, guys, I love you. But teenage boys, it's a lot of rotten baloney. So I was like learning. And again, as a fixer, I want to, and especially with ADHD, I see all the options in my head flying around. And I'm like, I want you to do this. I want you to do that. And I would be very vocal about it. So here's the last one. He's getting ready to fly the coop and no idea where he wants to go. And in the past, I would have been like, let's go here. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. And I did ask him to at least look at a college, and he did. And he wanted to maybe play football for one more year. He was a big athlete. And, I was like, he couldn't get there. He couldn't get there. And so I offered him the opportunity. He's going to work this summer. He's working on building some decks. And when I leave for Europe in either September, October, I'll be gone for 30 days. And I said, come with me. I will get you over there. I'll show you how the rail system works. I'll get you the pass and just go figure it out. Go explore, go see the world, no pressure. And if this isn't who you are, because I would happily travel, I would be a vagabond until the end of time. I would absolutely do that. If this isn't your thing, we'll change the date. You fly back. If it's your thing, we're going as a family for his graduation gift to Japan in January. If it's your thing, I'll meet you in Japan. That's it. Just go. And that was such a cool space for me to be in for many reasons. One, financially, like who gets to say that to their kid? And 2, the growth of my own soul. I can't protect anybody from anything. They're going to fall down, and letting go of the control and not saying you are going to college. Just go, you talk him into it or pressure him into it or make him go. I think at 53, if you're not still learning, if you're fixed in your ways and this is who I am and deal with it, if you don't like it, I think you might as well just give up. I think you should just like walk away because if you're not growing, then what's the point? So yeah, we'll see. It could be an interesting adventure for him.
So I just want to say, so I kind of did this, and this is why I love this story so much.
I love it.
Back in early 2000, I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I bought a plane ticket with a good friend, and we flew to Australia, and we stayed there for a while. And it was back in the day of internet cafes, and nobody had cell phones, right? And it was very different than it was now. My mom has always been a special person, has no clue how to listen to podcasts properly. So I'm just giving her a pass. She'll probably never listen to this, and it's okay. Yeah, she'll never listen. But she always said, if you have the ability to go travel, you'll figure it out later. Just go. So I went to Australia, and I kind of did that. I did the backpacking thing. I did the hostel thing. I just existed. I made friends, European friends that I still have to this day. They came to my wedding. It became such a way for me to identify with myself better. And I think the European element of what you're kind of bringing in here, which is you haven't figured it out yet. Live life. You'll figure out the next step later, which is something we as Americans don't really do. It's something that I'm going to push my daughters to do. And I'm so happy you're pushing your son to do it.
Yeah. And I mean, for me, it was even the idea of you've lived in Minnesota your whole life. Your perspective is built. And thankfully, Minnesota is an incredible place for them to grow up. The leadership here is incredible from a political perspective. And it's safe, relatively safe. It's beautiful, gorgeous. It's cold. It's very cold, by the way. I don't know if I mentioned that, but don't come here in February. And but that's the only vision of it he's seen. Just stretching him this much and meeting other cultures. And he's a huge World War II history nut. And I'm like, oh, do you know how many times I've been to Normandy in the American cemetery? Because I have traveled. And he's like, what? He's like, you can, and I'm like, yeah. You can go anywhere in the world and I will help you if this is what you want to do. And that's the thing. I'm trying to stay, the offer is out there. His aunt did just offer. She was like, oh, I wish I could go for one of the weeks and go with him. So I don't know. Maybe we tag team a couple months of being there to kind of help him, guide him, whatever. But listen, if I could go back in time and manifest someone to give me that opportunity before I had to do what I had to do, holy bananas. But perspective, right? That's what I talk about a lot. My whole perspective changes when you go and you see the cathedral that was just finished in Barcelona. It took 146 years. Those people, nothing that they did in their lifetime we talk about anymore. None of this matters. You have to go live your best life and try not to do any harm and leave a nice little bit behind. But no one cares. We don't know what he had for lunch on a Tuesday. No one cares. We're dust in the wind. Your opinion of me in 1990 is irrelevant to me now. And I love that freedom. But perspective took that leaving the space and feeling a little unsafe and a little scared to find that. So
I keep on going back to this imperfect perfection that you are. I mean, it's so nice. And look, if there's any young parents out there, this is what you're supposed to do. It's not, it's very far from what is the right thing to do. It's what can I do that might be wrong at times, but in the end is going to be the right move.
Yeah.
And I think you're really good at that.
Thank you. I really did try. My goal was just to protect. I think I was really scared as a young parent. And so I was very overprotective and very controlling. But all of that comes from deep love of something that you can't even really name, especially when you grow up with no family. I had to give birth to my family. And it didn't always work out. It was very hard, but it has to come from a place of love. I'm very excited to see where this takes Dane. Because I do feel like maybe after 5 children, maybe I got this one right. Maybe he'll take this opportunity and run with it.
I wrote this down. I was going to end it on this, but I just wanted to touch on it really quick. And I think it just fits you. And it was that the system didn't save you, stability didn't shape you, and permission didn't ever arrive for you. But you built your whole life on your own terms, how you wanted to. And I think so much of this just fits. You have this great story, and I hope your kids appreciate everything that you're doing for them, and I hope your husband appreciates it, and your employees appreciate it.
Oh,
and I hope
they do.
And I know that you appreciate it, which I think is what's really nice.
Yeah, my
really
gratitude goes really deep for the people that I love and care about. And I am one of the luckiest misfits on the planet.
Allie, I cannot thank you enough for spending the last hour with us. It means a lot.
You are so welcome. It's a joy to get to talk to someone who gets it. So
I get it. I
love
love
that.
this. And I want updates. We're going to link to all of your socials.
Yes.
People can find out what you're up to. People find out what your businesses are up to, all that good stuff. Yeah. Bother Allie. She's there. Bother her.
So fun. I love that.
Yeah. Bother her. Thank you.
I'm really shy and hate talking, obviously, too. So.
Obviously. Mean. You're a mean, horrible person. Obviously. You are the greatest. Allie, I can't thank you.
Much.
Thank you so much.